All right, there we go. All right, well, first thing on the item is approval of the minutes, which we're not gonna do because we don't have the minutes. Little mix up with Mandy, who has agreed or has been assigned to take our minutes. And unfortunately, actually Chris had emailed me on Friday to say where are the minutes, and I got in touch here. And Mandy's been out, so I don't know whether
I sent her the recording.
Yeah.
The next day.
So we'll have to work up, I'll have to set.
Have the recording.
Yeah, so I'm sorry about that, but hopefully,
So what is our budget? I mean,
Oh,
is she able to attend the meeting? Or
Yes,
is she gonna just
it
go
came out the
and-
plug. Yes, she is, our budget is $5,000
Right.
for, that does not include the cost for a secretary. That's money that we can spend on materials, speakers, whatever we want to do. We have money in the budget for all commissions. 4 hours maximum for people to do the minutes. If you come to the meeting, and I'd rather have her come, but we give people the option of either doing it. If you come to the meeting, you get 4 hours. If you don't come to the meeting, you get 2 hours to do the minutes
Right,
via the. So I'll talk to her. She's back tomorrow, so I'll talk with her in the next day or
So
two.
basically, all she's budgeted to do is to take the minutes.
Well, if I need something done, just like I did with Dennis, then she'll help me.
Okay, what about us? There's,
Well, what, like,
okay. well,
if you have
so-
if you have a request for somebody to do some research work or anything, let me know.
I mean, I think like, a big part of my experience is, on the planning commission and where we always had incredibly thorough minutes.
Yep.
For volunteers, that is like extremely helpful at moving things along. Also, if we in a meeting with the secretary, clerk, whoever it is, come up with an idea that we can't all do or individually can't do, then that person, I mean, again, we got spoiled by Janet because she was always like such
Right.
good follow through. But I think for volunteer commissions, it's really important to have that kind of support.
I don't disagree, Chris, and I would rather, I would rather see her here. I'm sorry about last month. We'll get the minutes from last month and we've, I got spoiled by Dennis because Dennis if he'd send me the minutes. And if I didn't approve them within 24 hours, he was sending me another message to say, hey, and I didn't get that and I just kind of forgot about it. So it's my fault that I didn't follow up with Mandy to see what was going on. But I have talked to Jim about my desire to have somebody here because I think they do a better job taking minutes and understanding. And we do have, if we need something done, much like with Dennis did some stuff for us. Either somebody in land use or because that's really where, well, we're really under planning. But Mandy will do, if I need some research done or somebody needs something, we can do that too.
Okay, good.
So, all right.
Thank you.
All right, so sorry about that, but we'll do that next one. All right, so I got a list of stuff while I was sitting there doing the agenda, thinking about it finally haven't done the agenda. And thank you to Michelle for getting it posted for us because she picked it up for me. I appreciate that. So we got, that's right. So we have a list of stuff here that we're working on. Wave boating is our first item. I'll do an update. Carol, you can join in if there's anything I missed. What's happened, and if you saw Jim's email last Friday, the Lake Waramaug Task Force, with the support of Kent, Washington, and Warren, has hired a company. I brought the thing with me. Terra Vigilis.
I tried looking them up. I saw that in
Yeah.
the selectmen's minutes.
Yeah, did you go to the website?
There
Did
was
you
a
click on the
video.
link?
Yeah, I can't find the video. I
Oh,
searched.
Well, I'll send it back. It's right, because I did open up when I did it. It's right in there. They've hired them to do a study of Lake Waramaug, and on one hand, I think after listening to it, it's probably the right thing to do. I just wish we had started this back in this year. The idea of the study is that they will start first they will do a survey of the community this fall and of the use of Lake Waramaug, what people use it for, how do they use it, what do they think of it, those kind of things. That'll get done this fall and will get published this fall. Then they come back in May and start by identifying how's the lake in May, before boats are on the lake, what's going on the lake, that kind of stuff. I'm hoping that they'll also be able to look at the data that the task force has compiled over the years, because I believe they've got some information. This is, if, my suggestion is if you haven't, and I'll be happy to send this back out again. Jim had put it in the last selectman's email, and there was a website, a link to the video by this company. It's about an hour long that explains what they do. And basically they survey, they got all sorts of equipment and all this stuff. And drones, underwater drones, above water drones, and they go out and survey the lake to identify the damage or none. That is being done by these type of use of these type of boats. And so by next fall, we'll have a complete, I mean, if you watch the video, it's pretty clear. I'd be hard pressed to believe that they'll come back and say, these boats are great on the lake, but I think the idea of doing a complete study is the right thing. I just wish we could have done it this year. Carol, you want to add anything?
My thoughts are, I thank the Board of Selectmen for prodding the Lake One Task Force. As you say, they should have done this 2 years ago.
Yeah, you did it,
But
yeah.
your prodding really helped that get accomplished. I've looked at this video, the lake is, they were scientists who lived around the lake. And they did a study of their own lake, North Lake, which is a little smaller than Warmark, it's 450 acres, and then they have a
North
small.
Spectacle?
This is in Wisconsin.
Oh, Wisconsin,
Yes.
okay.
And then there's a small 100-acre lake. And the study was pretty much what you would have thought. It didn't matter if you were 100 feet from shore or 400, the effect was the same. They actually had rods, you know, they were engineers and scientists. And I thought it was very interesting.
It's pretty
They
impressive.
showed at everything. And so they pretty much concluded what we already have. I guess we needed the study to show other people the harm that can.
And I think from the board's perspective, and I know Jim felt especially, Jim and Dean both felt this was critical. It gave us data to be able to say to folks, this is, you can't argue about that we didn't look at our lake, that just looking at what was online by other people. This is what happens on this lake, this is the damage, this is what's happened. I think it's pretty compelling if that, you know, looking at what they did on that other lake that's similar, I would expect we would get that a similar report. So that's where we are. So it's gonna be next year, but I feel I know the board is serious about making sure it happens and taking action if, assuming the action is warranted by the study. So, questions?
So, Carol, what I heard, and this is like one of the first times I heard it explained to me where I really understood the impact, was they were talking about, somebody was talking about the fact that the waves aren't just going out. They're stirring up the bottom.
yeah.
All that phosphorus is going to the
Released constantly.
shoreline.
30 minutes is the whole amount of phosphorus that's released. In 30 minutes, one spot, 2 passes.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
And so that's making more eelgrass or whatever grow along the shores or something like that.
Yeah, that has to do with the bottom, that's the hose that they have facing the bottom of the lake.
Okay,
That is like a fire hose, it comes out so hard. And so that's one thing, and then the waves on top of the lake are doing something else.
and then the other thing I heard was that it's also really disrupting the stratification of the cold water and the warm water,
Right.
which is evidently really important, and this is something the task force
Sure,
paid
Sean
attention.
can speak to that.
Yeah,
And also the damage on the shoreline too.
so
So Sean Hayden is still doing his research
Yeah.
out on,
And that's what, and I'm glad they hired them.
Yeah.
Technically, the task force has hired them because, like I said, but they should then have access to all the data that they've collected over the
Right,
years.
right.
So that should be helpful in terms of looking at what it was like 4 years ago
That should all-
and what's it like now.
yeah.
but I don't know if I read this right, but what I thought I heard was somebody was saying to the Board of Selectmen that they own the property on the lake, they know what to do.
Yeah, yeah.
Just get out of our,
Yeah, don't even.
yeah.
Oh,
I
seriously?
was very, yeah, that was unfortunate.
You know, can I,
A step
can you
further, you know, people who live on Wickham should just take care of Wickham and, you know, if you got speeding on your road, people on your road, you know, it's just kind of a, I don't know what his point was. The other thing that was disappointing there. and
Can
that
I-
was- just
Can I
one-
get in for a second?
Just let me finish, Linda. Yes,
Okay.
remember to look up. See you there. You know, it was also disappointing that people were, that same group was indicating that so much of why the lake is cleaner is because of the work of people who lived on the lake, and they were doing that of their own accord, as opposed to that we have,
Yeah,
you know, inland wetlands telling them they gotta do this stuff. So Linda, yep.
Yes, well, I'd like to thank Ann Jameson, our reporter from Voices, who's on tonight. I see her block here. And she did a wonderful article talking about this and quoting them, you know, the three gentlemen, and I had other words for them, but the three gentlemen who were there giving their pitch, how they knew better and they could take care of everything. And I think it was clear that they couldn't, and we know, and I'm pushing to ask, you know, granted, people at the lake, they should get more money. It's enlightened self-interest for them. But we have a very broad list of donors throughout 3 communities. And for them to assume that they do it all is their own ignorance. Don't put that in anything you're writing, honey, but but it's anyway, I think we're moving in the right direction, a little slow, but we're going there, you know?
Yeah, welcome to government. Thank you. That's so fair. All right, anything else on that one? So we'll keep you abreast, like I said, the survey of just what people think of the lake and how they use the lake and this and that should be done this fall. I'm sure everybody will be aware of that. We'll help get that out there when the time comes. All right, LISD. I still keep calling it Chris LISD. I don't care what anybody.
Me too.
So, I'll start, Chris, you can add, we got 2 proposals, one from Planometrics and one from
Steve Trinkus.
Steve Trinkus, thank you. The Planometric one is also in conjunction with, Fuss & O'Neill. Both plans, are within our price range that we budgeted, so that was a good thing. And the committee met Tuesday, right? Was that yesterday?
Yesterday.
I think that was yesterday, yeah. Committee met yesterday and we agreed to, we're gonna interview both of the 2 applicants. Jim asked everybody to submit a list of questions that they would have for the applicants to put it together a list. And obviously during the interview, you can expand on those questions, but we're hoping to do that in the next 3 to 4 weeks. And then, you know, make a decision and engage one of the 2 applicants and get the thing going. So
Right.
my hope is I think they both, I think they were about 4, each one, we asked them for a timeline to do the work. And I think both of them were around a 4-month timeline. And that assumes we do what we said, you know, what they need from us. So, you know, according to their time. So I'm confident we should be able to get this done and get this stuff brought to the board of, to the zoning board, you know, sometime next spring and have it in place. So, Chris, anything you want to add to that?
Well, just actually, the interesting thing is they're 2 very different proposals in a way.
Yeah,
Because you have one entity, Planometrics, and Glenn did the update of the POCD in 2003. But it's really more of a top-down, we're gonna review the regulations and tell you how to update the regulations, whereas I think Steve would be giving a lot more deliverables, specifically the manual. And I think his background as an engineer, I know one person reading through his resume was sort of really astounded by the depth and breadth of his experience.
it's interesting for me because I don't have a clue what most of the stuff they're talking about. So I'm just trying to look at getting the thing done in a timely fashion and making sure it's usable, you know, that not only with the engineers who are gonna have to abide by it when they come in, but that the general homeowner understands what's expected of them.
Right.
Yeah, so as
Well,
Chris
just at
said, one
30
wants to edit the zoning regulations and add all the stuff into them, and another one wants to really create a manual that would be attached to the zoning regulations that would all be one comprehensive manual, so, we'll talk to
It's
them
like
and
a
see.
menu,
Yeah.
and basically to your point about making it so it's approachable and not difficult for a property owner. First of all, most of the engineers already do
Yeah,
this stuff, they
right.
just have to be told, you have to include it.
Right, right,
But also for the individual with the house, you can get a lot of this information from the Northwest Conservation District, because they for years have been working on this, so in terms of rain garden designs for your gutters, all this stuff is, a lot of it's very simple and straightforward. It's not, you know.
well, I think that's one thing, once this thing gets in place, that I would like to see us talk about, is how do you educate the public and what you can do on your own instead of having to, you know, and I think that's something that. Talk about next, but that we should be we should think about how do we do that more effectively down the road. And with that, I'll go into our next item was educating the public.
Yes, good idea. Amy and I have not met at all.
Okay,
But Amy wrote a great article
Oh.
for the next newsletter about leaf blowing. And then I was.
Oh,
she
good
asked-
for her.
all right.
Yeah, she did great, and it's great, she asked me
Alright.
to do some proofing, I kind of made some comments and edits. And then was looking for a graphic to go with it, and that's where I found, did you have a chance to look at that PowerPoint that I sent to you? I was just doing some research on leaf
No.
blowing, and there's a community. I don't even remember, Western New York, I think. That had a full PowerPoint about their presentation to their community about banning leaf blowers.
Mhm.
And it goes all through the health and the
Any
environment.
flows of gas or any kind.
Oh, no, gas.
Gas.
Sorry.
Gas.
Oh, okay.
No,
Okay.
batteries,
Okay,
just
good,
gas
good.
ones,
Okay, I was
just
wondering,
gas
I
ones.
mean,
But like they went through the whole process, so I thought that we could kind of look at what they
I'll
did.
take a look.
and-
Oh, so she got that to you.
What article did you write on what?
Leaf-
About
Very quickly.
trading out your gas powered leaf blower for an electric.
Cool.
And the fall newsletter
Get a
goes out
copy and take a look
September,
at
the first weekend of
Yeah,
September.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And the articles are due Friday,
Great.
So
so.
how many people use leaf blowers versus contractors?
Well,
I don't know.
a lot of people,
That's what I would think.
yeah.
So you know, so the outreach has gotta be to the contractors, right?
Well, I mean, I think a lot of people have leaf blowers. Yeah, use them in their yards, they use them on their, clean off their deck, I mean, people use them for all sorts
I
of
don't
stuff.
have-
Fair amount.
I-
Well, a lot of contractors live
I know, I have, one.
So I
and I
just
don't
wanted,
disagree with you, Chris, that we gotta move on
I
that too.
just, one of the bullet points is that 1 hour of leaf blowing. Is equal to driving 1,100 miles in a Toyota
Wow.
Camry.
Wow.
Are you kidding?
Wow.
I am not, that is
Holy
coming from the
mackerel.
California Air Resources Board.
Wow.
So
It's
I'm
very.
not disagreeing with you. I'm just saying that the leaf blowing that I see going on is like when you drive down the road and
Oh,
these
yeah.
guys are blowing the leaves across one side of, from
Right.
one lawn over to the other.
Right, right.
And maybe it'll develop into some kind of ordinance.
Well, I think it's
Well,
That'd
interesting,
be great.
we know that
That's what this
California
is.
has passed a
Right,
law
that's
that
what we
in
need to do.
2025,
It'd be like that.
so whether the state,
That. They're banned in 2 communities in Connecticut and like 12 in New York and 3 or 4 in
So that we
Massachusetts,
could-
like.
They
did
banned
the-
them? Ah,
wow,
So that's not what this article is about.
No.
It's about
Just-
making that choice yourself, but I'm just saying,
I'd be interested in that.
Because I think a lot of the problems that we have are people coming in to work in the town who don't understand the regulations, right? Like,
well, then
what- what's that?
it's up to the homeowner and if
Up to
people
us.
complain and, I mean, the other thing that I thought was really interesting, because I was learning and I gotta figure out, but the noise. Because it's
Noise
pollution, but it's also a nuisance.
Oh, yeah,
And a 2-stroke backpack leaf blower. Is over 90 decibels. Normal
Mm.
conversation is 60 decibels. A whisper is 30, just to
Yeah.
kind of give you a sense, like it's.
Yeah.
And anything above 85 is considered harmful to your hearing.
Right.
So it's
that's in the,
it's bad for you.
that's in the concert level of 90, a rock
Mhm.
concert level,
Yeah.
90 decibels. It is,
Yeah.
And in the
electric-
fall,
the
it's
electric
constant.
Ones are around 65,
Yeah.
so they're just over normal conversation,
Right.
but 20 decibels below damaging levels.
I know if I use mine, I don't have to use my headphones as
What?
compared
What?
to. And I can hear my music in my hearing aid while I'm listening, no problem.
I will share that PowerPoint with you all. I shared
thank
it
you.
with you, but it was
Thank
just
you.
yesterday, so.
And I'll just follow up, Jim and I had a conversation with Peter Bowman. One of the things we had talked about here, I think it was here, was can we, we've had some people come before the Board of Selectmen about noise and contractors and that kind of thing. Jim we've looked into that, and the state, we can have a noise ordinance in town, but the state exempts all landscapers.
Right.
So it's like, well, what's the point? So we did talk about, should we put a time frame on contractors who are working outside, not somebody working inside, but contractors outside, not starting at 6 o'clock, 7:30. And Peter did some research and got a copy of Brookfield's ordinance, and we're following up on this to find out, make sure we're reading it correctly. It seems to be the ordinance, contrary to what we think the state law says, sets a timeline for when, time limit, 7 AM to 7 PM for any type of outside contractor work, including lawn and maintenance companies. We thought the state said you can have a noise ordinance, you could say to contractors, you can't start building the house until 7:30, but landscapers are exempt. So we're gonna look into that and see if Brookfield, if we don't understand it correctly.
Is that 7 days a week?
Well, Brookfield's actually limits the amount Monday through Friday is 7 to 7:30 to 7:30. Saturday is 7:30 to like 5, and Sundays like 12 o'clock to 5 o'clock. So it has limits.
Brookfield couldn't have their own ordinance.
Well, but you can't be in conflict with the state law is. So if the state law is that landscapers are exempt to that, then you can't have your own ordinance that,
I did follow up, 2 communities that have banned the
Yeah.
gas powered leaf
Yeah.
blowers in Connecticut, I think were Greenwich and Ridgewood.
Yeah.
So I'll look it up, but
Yeah.
maybe they banned them on the basis of pollution and not
well,
noise.
right.
I mean, I don't know if the state
But-
only is, if that's only because of noise,
So
I don't know.
So we're gonna follow up because we've had that issue, and the issue is, people just not being courteous to their neighbors, if you live in the woods and you start, who cares? But if you've got somebody who's, next, somebody was mentioning to me, right next door to their house, they start at 6:45, to do that, so.
7:30 to 7:30, I mean, how much more time would it?
I know, seriously.
I understand, but they're trying to be, and I get it, and if you think of the landscapers that, you have 4 days worth of rain and now you gotta make it up for it, all your
I'd rather go for the electric.
I don't disagree, so we can.
Quieter
we can look
and
at-
less.
Yeah. So under the next one, actually, I couldn't figure out what to call it, so I called it unsustainable town practices. Jim and I met with Mark Showalter and Kevin Smith to talk about what we do in town. Everything from what kind of leaf blowers and how do we mow the lawns, and what kind of chemicals do we use in our, whether it's on the road or on our property, any of those kind of things. What do we use to clean the buildings? We're supposed to be doing green cleaning, and I know I've talked with Mark and we do use products that are supposed to be clean, but so what we asked the 2 of them to do, and they were like way on board with doing this and switching and looking at, where they could switch like leaf blowers, for example, or even Jim was saying he bought a chainsaw, freaking thing works like a dream, and it's electric chainsaw and it works.
Yeah.
So what we want to do is 2 things, is look at what do we have. I can't decide to do something until we know what's the inventory of what we have, and then look at like we've done with things like bridges and technology and our roads, is develop a plan for replacement of equipment. So we have a regular plan in place, and then we can look at, okay, We've got, I don't know how many leaf blowers we have. We have 3 leaf blowers. I don't know, so we could replace because of the issues with. If they might be the first thing we do, and so, but have some kind of a plan to move to more energy efficient, non-polluting, sustainable, what's that?
Vehicles also.
Yes, we are actually buying 2 vehicles this year, one for the fire marshal and one for the building official, and they'll both be hybrids. At the least, we're trying to get electric, but they'll at least be hybrid, so, we've talked to them. And, we budgeted some money and it's in the budget, so, they'll be getting those this year. So that's what we're doing, and I'll report back once I asked them to get me some information in early September, and we'll meet back again and go through it, and,
Great.
and we'll see where we go. So composting,
Well, that a
Go ahead.
question, I thought that would also get into buildings.
when you say, I have another, I didn't put that down here.
Okay, I was just.
I got that down here somewhere, didn't
I
I?
thought you did.
What's that?
Yeah, well, transfer station data.
Yeah, that's not building. so-
Okay, I'm
Yeah.
going off of this.
Right,
Yeah.
right, I forgot, I did not put that on, well, I have it under. No, I didn't have the buildings, Chris, I forgot to put that down there, so thank you.
Yeah, you're less.
So I did mention that I haven't done this yet, so I'll add this to the list and try to. As most of you know, we have a building and properties committee, it's Bob Papson, Joe Fredlin, and
Elliot,
Bruce Adams. Yeah, Bruce Adams,
is Elliot on it?
no,
Okay,
Elliot's on the ambulance committee.
Yeah, I know that.
Building committee. We have been collecting data for at least 3 years now on all of our energy use of all of our buildings. We get the electrical downloads automatically, and Jeff enters our use of propane and oil into a software on a regular basis. On every time we get a bill, he enters it. So one of the things I talked to Bob about, and I haven't, this was a while back, and I haven't followed through with him, is to meet with the committee to talk about, let's take a look at that data over the time and
Right.
determine what can we do to make which building do we want to tackle, which buildings, and what do we want to do? So I haven't.
the great thing about that, Jay, is you've got 3 years. And
Yeah.
So
Oh,
even
yeah.
though we don't have it for all the different properties, private, whatever, to be able to have a spreadsheet that goes back 3 years,
Yeah,
just include the degree days, that could be
It
just
does.
like a really helpful,
Well, and exciting and now the solar's on the firehouse,
Mhm.
Right.
just
Yeah.
to kind of look and see what that's doing. To
Yeah.
relative to usage.
So what you always have to remember though, is that what you want is not just the solar, but you want the envelope.
Mm.
So there's a guy building affordable housing and he needs 4 solar panels to provide all the electric for the single family home for the whole year, all right? But if you go around and you look at, say, a ranch house that was retrofitted, it may have the whole roof covered because it's so poorly insulated and
Right.
things like
to
this.
start with.
So it is, the more solar we have, the more electricity we're producing. But we wanna use less of it at the building, we wanna share it throughout
Right,
whatever.
absolutely.
So to that point, like, with the EMS building, part of the original proposal was that the RFP was, the architect was supposed to come back with a budget for doing the building to net zero standards. And I know you got a figure for the building, I've seen that budget, so that's impressive.
A little expensive to me, a lot more
Yeah.
expensive than I thought it would be. but
Yeah.
Anyway,
So, but I didn't see anything in the budget that was responded to that part of it.
well, I'll tell you, well, maybe not off topic, because I want to make sure that building meets our,
Right,
what we can do, but. There's a building committee that was formed for the ambulance building. Well, we had already engaged an architect who specializes in emergency services buildings, so around the state, seems to have a very good reputation. He did a preliminary design and a cost estimate for the ambulance building for the retrofit, and also adding 3 ambulance bays to the building. Came out to $5 million.
$5,188,000.
Yeah.
Holy
Yikes.
No, for
So-
a building that's already there.
And it was interesting because the building committee met one already last week. And we have, Mark Showalter, myself, Jim, Elliot Johnson,
Peter
Peter
Bowman.
Bowman, Heidi Johnson. I
It's
think
a
that-
good committee.
I think that's the group. And it was interesting to hear different people who, of course, know more than I do about it. Peter was like, yeah, Peter's an architect who designed and said, yeah, I'm not surprised. Somebody else was like, are you kidding me? You know, so it was like, so what our next step is, and one of the things on my list is to talk to them about what are they doing for net zero energy efficient?
Right.
What's that deal? Is the committees is going to meet with that, with the architect and the cost estimator sometime in the next month. To go over the numbers with them, go over the design and all, and then, ask questions. The other part of it is the next step would be if once the committee gets comfortable with those numbers, ask, you need to have things done over, whatever, then the next step is to go to the Board of Finance before you go to a town meeting to ask the town for money. Because we don't have that kind of money sitting around. Anyway, that was,
So, by the way, is that estimator the one who was interested in doing the actual work, or is that a totally independent?
no,
Okay,
nothing,
yeah.
has nothing to do
Yeah,
with
yeah, yeah.
and he's independent of the architect, although the architect hires him, but you know, they're not part of the architectural firm.
Right,
They hire somebody outside the architectural firm.
okay, well, so,
But one thing to remember about the building, and when you think about it, they have an existing building. So if you were building a building from scratch, in my mind, you might not need all that space, but you have an existing building. And Peter pointed out, so you want to add these bays, because we don't have any place to park the vehicles. The cost to renovate that building, to be able to put the bays in, so you still need an extra space, because there's not enough space to put 3 ambulance bays in there.
you have to add 2,400 square feet.
Yes, we only have 2 ambulances, but the idea is we're designing for, 30 years, and Heidi has convinced is made a real strong case for that. We're gonna have 3 ambulances down the road, folks, whether you like it or not, so we should build for that now, and that makes sense. But the cost of retrofit, if you wanted to put the ambulance space in the building, you'd then not have enough space for your other stuff. And the cost would be way more than what the cost is to add it on as its own building. So again, I'm not an architect, I'm not
I'm just on for the ride.
so I just try to make sure the meetings happen and they keep going and get over with,
So the good news with that is, there are 2 things. One is that both Peter and Elliot are extremely familiar with Passive House and that stuff. And, the second thing is that, we should be encouraging it to be a model,
Yeah,
not just because it's, better for our operating and maintenance costs, but it's the one thing a town that's affluent can do for other towns that don't have the resources that we do, is to basically show
Yeah.
people how you can do things.
I agree that if you're gonna spend all that money, then it should be, zero in. It should be,
And I want the penthouse. That's
All
a
right.
flat roof, right?
Penthouse?
it's a flat roof
Do a
now.
green roof and I can have my little,
Sure, I'll work that in, Chris.
thank you, thank you.
All right, moving along here, looking at composting, I keep saying I'm gonna go visit Brookfield and do that, and I haven't got a chance to do that yet. I will say, we are up to collecting 5 barrels of compost at the transfer station.
Fantastic.
They just brought another one up there because per week, they're taking away 5. But the size of the containers there, which is all coming out of our out of our garbage.
So you're gonna basically be generating another spreadsheet showing like that evolution. So again, that would be a great thing to have online for people to see,
I'll
right?
go to the next one, transfer station data collection. So, yeah,
I just wanted to say that I had a bunch of people ask me, what can we do to start composting in our town? I said, we
What?
are, and it was on the cover of the newsletter, and it was in the selectmen's email, and we were outside, so people still don't know.
well,
I'm on it.
All right.
So we just need to keep, like, I don't know what to do. Do we do a
Yeah.
postcard? Do we do a post? Do we do a seminar?
So the.
Yeah, no,
Without
I get
getting
it.
too deep in the weeds, I mean, most people used to compost themselves at their own homes. We don't seem to be doing that so much anymore. But it would be great if somebody could figure out with all the leaves that get blown around, right? How to have a big business that's composting, whether it's a town or a private individual. I mean, there's money to be made at that for somebody.
Well, and again, I haven't done enough on this and I apologize, but just whatever. My understanding is. the city-
James?
Yes, Linda.
Chris's mention of leaves, you know, we have our lawn guy mulch the leaves. He just drives over them and over them until they're mulched, and we leave them on the lawn.
That's what I
Now,
do.
that's how you get rid of it,
Yeah.
and you
it's
don't
in it.
have to rake and blow and all that, and we need to talk to people about that. It's much easier.
But that's an important point because, you know, like when we talk about the fact that we used to compost in our own gardens, right? And now we're suddenly transporting the waste to.
Yeah.
place. It's more energy, more whatever.
Right,
Well-
this is good for the lawn too. I mean, it's not that my lawn is so gorgeous, but it's pretty healthy.
Well, it was interesting when we talked about it with Mark and Kevin, they were both talking about electric lawn, the big electric lawn mowers.
Yeah.
The prices are coming down in those things significantly. I was looking at it up at Ace
And
Hardware.
the repairs
They're-
go way down.
They're about the same price,
See the repairs.
really. Well, there's about the same price as as a gas powered one now. and
Yeah,
they're both.
good.
So that's
Good.
great. So what I've done is I put together a spreadsheet. I'm working with Jeff, who's out on vacation. I guess he gets to go on vacation, right? But we have we've developed a spreadsheet that has everything on it now, that all the new stuff we've been doing at the transfer station. From the textiles to the the composting, all the glass. We have propane tanks on there. We have the the e-waste that we collect. So all the stuff that we have, we do have from 2016, 17. All of the amounts of MSW, is that the right numbers? Material, solid waste, yeah. How much we've done with that since 2016, 17, and how much we've done in recyclables since 2016, 17. So we can see that data. And we're collecting now, and Jeff has collected the data for the last 6 months or so, since we started with the compactors, which was when? February, March,
Yeah,
April, whenever
well,
it
and
was.
we have to put in a little asterisk for when we kicked out the commercial hauler.
Right, and then so we know that's the
gonna
one
be a
thing,
big-
yeah, that shows that'll take out a bunch, but. Anyway, we have the data, and so now we're putting together, how often we get. Like the composting picked up. I'm not sure if they weigh the composting or they just say you took 5 bins away, so I would love to see if they can tell us how much they weigh when they take it, so that we can really show.
Probably
But-
get an average
Right,
weight that you could just get an estimate of.
So that's what we're doing, and that's what we're gonna show that, and we'll have working on a spreadsheet that we can use to share with folks and
Yeah.
let them know
Awesome.
what's happening.
I mentioned this to you, I mentioned this to you, Jay, but it's also fascinating to hear Liz or
Liddy.
Liddy give you their they're doing little sort of surveys all the time, and the trends and when and who brings what. It's amazing.
I go up
Great
there and talk to them.
anecdotal evidence.
Yeah, I talked to them and they're amazed at how many people are showing up doing composting, for example. When they ask people to take their glass out of their recycling and put it in the other, people, almost everybody is like, oh, sure. No problem,
Great.
nobody argues, nobody, is
Yeah,
upset
nice.
about doing it. So it's been really, well received.
So the downside,
What's that?
We're enlightened.
Yeah.
so the downside I've heard is that they want to know why members of WEC and the Sustainability Committee are not all driving electric cars.
So,
I know, Carol.
Mine's a hybrid,
I have a hybrid.
There you go. I'm the
that's an
bed.
improvement.
pretty good, and I actually walk to work every day, so I feel it about.
Well, that's unfair.
All right, moving on the list here, stone wall identification, Chris.
Okay, so, what I've done is, I don't know if I had known this and forgot it, whatever, but there's, basically, the state of Connecticut, Yukon has, a whole entity on, it's a Stonewall Initiative. So I just, printed some information, so it's not like this is a crazy idea.
Are they worried that people were taking all the stone walls from Connecticut at one time?
Well, I mean, they do it, I mean, I can't tell you how many stone walls I've seen people. Convincing the owner they didn't need or
Yeah.
was whatever, and so they charge them to take the stones away, and then, of course, they sell them when they. But my point is that, and Linda could speak to this much better than I, there's incredible amount of information that the stone walls record. Notably all the farm fields and things like this, and so, so I've spoken to an engineer, I've spoken to George DeVoe, who does so many of the appraisals for land conservation. And trying to identify, is there a way of generating some big maps that would be helpful? I mean, if you go look at a property with the LiDAR maps they now have online, it's easy to identify a property. You know, what's on it in terms of stone walls, but having a sense of the whole town, like how many old fields are there that are now in early succession? Because, I mean, in my humble opinion, I'd like to see some of the early succession forests be restored to agricultural land. Okay,
Mhm.
and, but I certainly not the expert. I know that we're trying to get people to plant trees in cities and to deal with, you know, the island heat stuff there. You'd think like we wouldn't want to be taking down forest land, but I think there's a case for farmland being really important, you know, for not just consuming, but you can do, you know, go ahead, Jay.
Well, I was just gonna ask you, how does that, I get, your first effort is to want to know where the stone walls are.
Right.
For,
Which identifies basically agricultural land.
okay. So that, and that's your first, that's the first step in.
Right.
Because trying to then turn it over into agricultural land is a whole nother level of. You gotta get people who wanna do that, you know?
Well, yeah.
Wouldn't that require you to go around and actually,
I'm sorry, Carol, what?
wouldn't that require you to actually go around and look at the stone walls?
Okay, so when I think this was first proposed, which would have been with the resource inventory report that was done 25 years ago, okay? I think people would love to have identified all the stone walls, but it would have required a surveyor to go around and basically locate all the stone walls and survey, okay? But now, I mean, I know working with George for years now, what he can see in a satellite map is astounding. I can stand there on the ground and not see the zigzag stone wall, which he can see from up above. And so it's not perfect, but it's a lot of information. And if you look at the old soil maps that were done in the 20s, okay, which are basically early aerial photography, it is amazing the information you see on those maps. A lot of it, the stone walls align with the better soils, obviously. Farmers didn't want to be mucking around in wetlands, right? Just you lose whatever.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of information there about what was actively used. So if you look at the POCD now with the maps that it has
Yeah.
about ag land or whatever, this would just be a history.
So how does that?
more accurate.
I think it's a cool idea. I'm trying to understand how it relates to doing, to sustainability.
Okay,
in
so,
the- For the town.
okay, in my.
Yeah,
okay,
yeah,
So-
yeah.
Long ago, we sort of talked about what are potential jobs in the town. Okay, so, we have an aging town, so there's a need for a lot of people that can do aging in place jobs. You have a lot of work retrofitting homes, so there should be, for really well-informed contractors, a lot of work around that. We have an ag STEM program. We have farmland, which we tend to just look at. Okay?
Yeah.
Even though our 490 is good, it doesn't, you can't get 490 for open space, you have to actively farm it. But actively farming, is kind of interesting what some people consider actively farming, okay? So to me, the farmland is a huge resource to future farmers of America. We, in a way, could be the breadbasket for urban centers. We have the food hub up in Litchfield or Torrington. I mean, there are all these things that are sort of evolving. So I just see agriculture potentially is coming back. You also have all the forest land we've protected. And, you know, most people don't talk about forest farming, but there is forest farming that can occur, does occur. Mushrooms,
But
nut
I'm
trees,
still not understanding how that connects with sustainability,
creating jobs.
creating jobs.
Yeah,
Well, food's pretty.
I mean,
required
it's
for
like
sustainability.
stewardship of land, right?
So,
It's just, do we want it all to be forest? Or do we want to bring back some component of some percentage of agriculture?
so I get, so is that the right step in that discussion? Identifying stone walls as the stepping stone for the next discussion about, okay, we've got all this land that used to be farmland. How do we get it back, or some of it back to being farmland? I mean, that's what you're talking about, right?
Right,
So does the see what I'm trying to say? Does the is the discussion about how do we take some of this land that we have here and get it and help farmers expand it? Should that be our discussion?
well, I guess I would say you need to have both discussions. I think with anything that you do, you have to start with just like one step at a time.
Right, well, that's why I'm
Something
asking,
simple.
yeah.
But you also, I think, have a sense of how great the potential is.
Okay, so I'm just trying to talk this
Yeah,
through so I
yeah.
understand where you're going. So if we go through, let's say, and working with George or somebody, and figure out how do you identify all the stone walls in the area?
You're identifying farmland or land that was once
Once
farmed.
farmland, okay. So then from that step, are we saying? And some of it's gonna be, people have built houses on this property, people have built, you know, roads are through it now that weren't there before, you know,
Right,
all that kind of
sure.
stuff. So if the goal is then our goal is to get more people farming in our communities. I mean, that's your thing.
To me, what I would say, Jay, is, okay, when we hit 30% open space.
Yeah.
In 2013, one of the planning commission members said, okay, we've achieved that goal. Let's check it off as done and move on to the next thing. They didn't do that, but as they came up to 2023, Dimitri, I remember saying, hey, enough with the open space. We need to focus on affordable housing. What I would say is, no, we could have 60% protected land, forest land and farmland. That doesn't exclude affordable housing from happening.
Well, right.
Okay, we can do both at the same time. So you shouldn't say we're done with protecting farmland or forest land or the rivers. We can keep on that mission, but we also need to look at how we can, you know, grow the community, which to me is not just about retiring here. It's about, you know, kids graduating from the Ag STEM program and maybe being able to farm here. and maybe the last thing to say is, when you're building sustainably, one of the things they talk about is limiting the materials, travel time. Like, if you can get, your wood flooring from within 100 miles, it's
Right.
much more sustainable.
Absolutely.
And so think about where the food is coming from to our cities,
Sure.
from Chile with grapes, from California, from Mexico. Maybe we could do more of it locally.
I guess I don't disagree with any of that. What I don't see is how the identification of the stone walls helps us with that effort to move, to have that discussion in the town.
Let me just take one step.
Yeah.
So let's say your friend can see from above and
Right.
sees the stone walls. And that was farmland.
Right.
So then what does the town say? Well, is that land something that we can buy or something we can farm on? Is that what you're doing?
No, I think I think it's more about, the planning commission, economic development, sustainability, all sort of looking at what we could do with the 24,710 acres that we have in Washington, that doesn't require wake boats to enjoy it, right? What kind of activities can we be doing in this community? So it's like, people come here to live, to retire, to raise kids, but they also come here to enjoy the land, okay? So, I think it's just a way for us to say, hey, we have this land and we care about the land and we care about the forest, and our mission as a community is to take care of the land, to be stewards of the land. But we have to create jobs for people too.
I
You don't see how the stone walls,
fit into that at
okay,
this point. So let's put it on the agenda. We'll talk about it. I'd like you to
yeah,
come back and think about that, help us out, because clearly not all of us are seeing the same picture you're seeing. I want to hear.
so what's amazing, Jay, is, and maybe I can do this with George DeVoe with you one day, is walking with him is always a lesson, because George is a Feduna. You go out in the woods, you cannot believe the things that exist there that you've never seen before. And the stone walls give you an incredible history of old buildings, of where farms were. And then somebody like Amy would probably go out and go, oh God, this soil's perfect for cannabis. I mean,
Be okay, Tim?
Mushrooms.
All right,
Hey,
so let's continue that, because I gotta think about what you said.
Okay.
And I just wanna make sure we're putting our energy into where it will lead in the right direction in the end, all right?
yeah, got it.
All right, next one on our agenda is traffic calming walkability actions. So,
Well, so, I got the connectivity grant in last month, to the Department of Transportation for part of the Titus sidewalk work. We'll keep our fingers crossed, see if that happens. And then I need to do some more work with the calming part of the DOT on 47 through the depot, and I haven't done anything more on the complete streets policy component. I pulled up what another community did. I have yet to read through it, so that's where I am.
and I added my name there because I thought of something that we were doing and I have no idea where it was now. so.
Let's meet about it
I
someday.
love it.
Certainly was on my mind when I typed up this agenda, and now I'm trying to remember, what were we talking about? It was probably one street who wanted to do it themselves, so we're gonna let them try.
Yeah.
Jay,
Think about that. Yes,
traffic calming. It is so obvious to me that each side of each downhill road that comes into the depot should have a flashing sign giving you your speed and the sign what the limit is. Because someone is gonna get run over and smashed on the street someday by a big truck. And these exist. I don't know if they cost a lot of money. I can't believe they do. But two of those coming into the village would be very intelligent management for this town to pursue. Because it's ludicrous that they come in as fast as they do.
I agree, Linda.
Linda, we
Then
did,
put those babies up. What, I mean, what's
we
the
did
problem?
purchase, we did have in the budget for 2 more of those. We have one right now on Saturday, one on Old Litchfield. I think there's a third one somewhere that I don't, a road I don't travel. Oh, Baldwin Hill, right.
Yeah.
So we have purchased, I don't know if we purchased them yet, Linda, but we did budget for 2 more of those units. And we have discussed putting them out in, that's exactly where I think they should go. The only issue we have, and I kind of feel like I don't care, just put them up anyway, is that it's really state roads and you have to get approval from the state to do that
That
stuff.
shouldn't be hard, should it?
Well, Linda, So my thought is, and I've talked to Jim about this, and I'm trying to win him over on this, is just put them up and let the state complain about it to us as opposed to hear from them. So,
Yeah, let them come find us.
yeah. Ask for, we need permission.
We're gonna have a terrible accident someday,
So,
and frankly,
There've been quite a few near misses.
Yes, I totally
Yeah.
agree with you. And
I mean,
my
there's-
concern is that the state will, in their wisdom, will say, well, just put a traffic light there and that'll solve it.
They
And of
put
course,
4 signs on the crosswalks,
Yeah,
but you
yeah.
don't see them and
So-
you don't,
so,
that's not really what we're looking for.
so Linda,
They're
I
gonna
am hopeful that
they'll go there.
I convinced the rest of the board of selectmen to just put them there and just let the state tell us to take them down and ignore them. They got enough things going on.
We'll have a public,
Traffic calming thing I had on there, so there you go. We have had a number of people, we have numbers of roads where people are calling us up and complaining about speeding and it's difficult. Every town in the state, I think, has the same issues. Cars are not designed to go 25 miles an hour in my mind. You feel like.
but they can.
Yes, they can. I know. I drive my car and I'm like, when I drive my wife's car, I look down, I'm going 20 miles an hour faster. I mean, she's just, the cars are built better, but,
It's-
we've
no,
had an issue with folks on Wickham and, we have looked at, one thing we found, we had 2 different speed limits on Wickham, so we're putting in we're changing all the speed limits there to 25. I think parts of it are 30 or 35. And we were talking about putting a stop sign, quite honestly, at Saturday. To stop people there.
Saturday, not old.
Well, we talked about golf.
Litchfield?
Well, no, not all of Litchfield has a stop sign there, but it's what's happening is
Right.
people coming down Wickham. And coming around the corner there past Bell Hill and past
Right.
Golf Course Road.
Oh, I see.
Past golf course.
Yep.
We looked at Golf Course Road and Jim did with the trooper and with Kevin and the concern there is. And you'd have to put another flashing light earlier to say there's a stop sign ahead because you come around the curtain
Yeah.
corner, you won't see it. But we're gonna put one down, I believe we're gonna put one down in Saturday. Cause that's a big stretch where people are really moving along pretty fast there
Yeah.
both ways. I will say, don't print this in. I will say, I'll bet you 10 people on the street said they want it. I'll see what happens once we put it there. It's like the people up in Roxbury wanted those speed bumps. As soon as they put them in, they all complained they were too noisy. They took them down. So, we'll see.
So this
We're
is,
not asking for speed bumps.
I know.
so Jim made the observation at one meeting that it was, anybody taking their kid out walking on the road
Yeah.
should be reported to DCF, right?
I think you meant that.
And I thought, okay, that's a realistic evaluation, but it's like, wait a second, if something's wrong with this structure, right?
Yes, absolutely. I think you meant that.
So the fascinating thing is like, there are all these communities where, the O'Toole's go to the villages in Florida and everybody's in a golf cart, right? Oh, they must have golf courses, right?
They do.
Anyway, so.
The villages? Oh, my God, yeah.
You can drive a road-ready utility vehicle on any road that is 35 miles per hour or less. And pretty much Washington, I mean, the Green Hill's 25 miles per hour. I think you can pretty much go anywhere in town with a utility vehicle.
When you say utility, you mean a
Like
golf cart?
Yeah, like a road ready.
Oh.
they-
Like an alternate.
Oh, a road ready, you gotta be
Road ready,
road
okay,
ready,
so
right.
it's,
Your license plate?
Yeah, if they're road ready, they do. They
but
do.
it's not as, I think, the same as a car, but anyway, my point
No,
is,
there's a
is that
different
they're
one.
smaller,
And the.
Yeah.
they're smaller.
Right,
And so that gets away, I mean, because a lot of the problems I hear about are basically construction related trucks. Or people who seem to need to have a huge, SUV,
Yeah.
Lincoln, whatever, and the 16-year-old's driving the car at 90
No,
miles
that's-
an hour.
yeah, through
On a
here,
dirt
I don't
road.
see, it's everybody. I hate to say.
So part of making us a community safe could be focusing on getting people walking and also driving smaller vehicles, right, at slower speed. You would do it, right?
Does it already?
I'm on my
No,
bicycle.
she's on her
Right.
bike.
There you are.
Yeah, but you live in the flat area. You don't
E-bike,
live on the hill where I
that's a
live.
whole other problem. Kids are getting
All right.
killed on
There's a
e-bikes
golf
All right.
course at the end of it.
because they're going, there's a whole article in New York Times about kids on e-bikes and they're going too fast and so there's a fine line between what's allowed on a road and what's really a
Yeah.
bicycle.
I
Right.
can see that. I
Yep,
can see
sure.
that.
I was
We
in New
just-
York yesterday, this weekend, and man, people on those scooters, some of them. Way,
Yeah,
they are
yeah,
flying
yeah.
on those,
So,
no helmets, no anything.
Yeah.
Anyway, all right.
All right.
So that's where we are. I knew I had a traffic calming one. I knew there was something there. All right. And Linda will, I'll be lobbying to put those signs on Green Hill and going out of town here for sure.
Thank you.
Invasive species. I talked to Jim. We had put money in our budget for an intern and, we got no applicants for an intern. Our goal
really?
Our goal was to hire an intern who would do a survey of all the town property and identify invasive species, because as Brian has said, that's the first step. If you want to remove them, you gotta know what you got. Jim then did follow up with Brian, because Brian hired a few interns to see if he had anybody that they didn't hire, or if they had some contacts, and we were not, at least as far as I know, as of last week, we were not able to hire somebody, so we'll have to think about that as something.
I might mention, the Conservation Commission was able to hire someone this summer.
Right.
From the high school. If you pursue and you bang on the doors, they come. And we might contact the woman at the high school. I mean, these are high school kids, but all they're doing is walking around with their telephone, finding where the invasives are and putting it on the map. It isn't rocket science. And we have this wonderful kid, Ashton Hodge, and he's been doing that on the New Preston Open Space property. And we've also started him looking at trees that are still healthy, but the vines are crawling up and we're cutting the vines at the bottom. Now, that's pretty simplistic, but we think that may help the tree live longer. And we're also interviewing people about putting a pollinator garden in next year in that space, because it's lovely and sunny.
Yeah.
So-
Yep, I did mention to Jim that you folks had gotten a high school student as well.
We pay him, by the by. We don't, it's not a volunteer job.
Yeah, that's what our thing was too.
You know what, the art science students, I mean, this is
You
the
would think
first year
that-
of seniors,
Yeah.
and they have to do this SAE thing, so that might be a good pool of candidates for, future invasive
Yeah.
identification. Or ongoing, like through the fall until weather changes.
Yeah, even then, yeah.
So basically, Michelle, are you suggesting that, if the town made some funds available, that the ag program could basically have that as sort of
Yeah.
a routine monitoring thing that they always did? And it could extend to the lake, there are all sorts of
Sure,
things.
I just know that there's a hours requirement, and depending on what their area, their area may be animals, and so that wouldn't be that, but if their area is plants, well, here you
But
go.
why not have Ag STEM basically engaged in an ongoing monitoring of town,
No, that's a
One,
great
we
idea.
can pay for it.
Yeah.
The students, yeah, a lot of them.
I don't believe they're supposed to get money for their senior project.
No, it's not a senior project. The SAE is the supervised.
Oh,
agricultural
okay. Okay. Yeah.
They are paid, many of them are paid,
Most
they
of them
work,
are,
they work
they
in.
work all summer at a farm or.
And
at
they work all year long, they
hospital.
work all year long, I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, many of them work all year long, so it's not, that's a great idea.
So there's
to
a
Jim.
great article,
I'll talk to Jim about that.
I should go back and get it and send it to you, but it was about invasive species. And it was focused on man, right? You know, when you go to the Bronx Zoo or
Aren't we all?
anyway.
Yeah.
So one of the things I've always wondered about is why we didn't, you know, we're proud of our girls field hockey team or the swim team or the boys baseball team. Why don't we promote lake activities like sailing and rowing and lake monitoring that are become town sports? And the schools are focused on using the lake for passive recreation or that don't require.
And your brain must be just like worn out from all these things that you.
Yeah, we're worn out.
It's just,
I mean, I mean that respectfully.
no, I
Chris.
know that, Jay. But-
Man.
But you know, we already have
I-
the gunnery
you've got a great
rowing, we
point.
already have
Yeah,
rooms
right.
rowing.
You got a great point.
Yeah.
You just need more people.
Anyway,
Alright,
All right, folks, is there anything else that I didn't think about that we wanted to go over there? So the last thing I put on the list was the discussion of climate leader designation. Chris had mentioned this, and unfortunately, I made copies for everybody, and of course I didn't, so.
I
Yeah, the
I
worksheet there.
started, yeah, I
We-
started
we-
identifying what I forgot.
This is from Sustainable CT. So if you go on their website, you all have access there and look at that. And again, our goal here is, we're not necessarily looking to get points because we decided we're not doing silver, but I think there are some good things on here that we should be thinking about. We are talked about already doing energy efficiency in our buildings, and we're looking at some of the, you know, many things meet some of these, you know, other requirements, but I think, you know, on here is, you know, increase preserved open space, improve open space, manage woodlands. I mean, many of the things here that we in town, in one way or another, whether it's us or Steep Rock, there's a lot of things in here that we do, but I'd like to ask you guys to take a look at this.
Right.
And let's, if you know, there's benchmark and track energy usage. Well, we're starting to do that. The bigger thing is then what do we do with that? You know, next, but, so.
so no, I appreciate that, Jay, because in a way, the things that we've got on our current list are things that we all individually have, you know,
Thrown out.
identified
Right.
but we don't really understand how big of an impact it's going to have. This, I think, addresses probably the things you need to focus on if you're really going for net zero. Okay, zero carbon emissions and things like that. And so, to me, it's like, after years of being told to take baby steps, I'm fine with baby steps as long as I know I'm going in the right direction. And so I think this might be the step where we begin defining the areas we need to move towards, so that in 2030 and 2040 and 2050, when you're 100 and I'm 98, okay, and our great grandchildren,
2050, that's-
or well, let's go just for the town's 250th birthday, which is going to be in 6 years.
Yep.
Right?
Really?
Yeah.
Yep.
Right. I mean, that would,
90,
That's a
2029,
major
yeah,
celebration,
that's right.
Yeah.
Yep.
right?
Yep.
I mean,
6 years.
We were here when it was the
Two
two.
25th,
Yeah.
I worked on that.
No, I was here for the 200. That 200 was 1979, right?
that's right.
Oh, yeah, I've
We moved
seen
in
the
78,
pictures of them, yeah.
That was the first year. That was the first year of the. Yeah, that was the first year of the fireworks too.
1976, although,
Yeah.
you know, 1734 is when the first people settled on Woodbury Road. And then, of course, the Averils in 1743, so we can identify all sorts of, you know.
But your point, I think you got a good point. I'd like to see us, you know, there's stuff on here that we're doing already, but let's take a look at this and see if there's other things on this list that we think, you know, we could do to move it forward.
Well, I think Chris, to your, I already, 7.7.1, implement a community energy campaign.
Yeah. that's a
Right,
great
that's
one.
like, that's kind of what we're talking about,
Right.
educating the
Yeah.
entire community, trying to get some data, trying to move us all, reduce the entire footprint, is a long-term. goal,
Yeah, no,
right?
I mean, a simple description would be, you can take a look at the house that Habitat is building or the Vincent houses, and then you take a look at the Habitat's house in Hartford. And one has an annual heating, cooling, electric bill of $150. I'd say that's a worthwhile target, and then all you have to do is look at what your own utility bills are.
No.
Especially as they just went all up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so can everybody, if you can't access that, let me know, I can send it to you, or I can just. We can send it,
I can send it.
Michelle can get better action. And so you have this list,
Great,
As
thank you,
we-
Michelle.
you'll see, and there's some backup, info about it too,
Yeah.
there, but you can detail that, and, let's take a look at that and see if there, I like the idea. And I like the idea of next time talking about, we have $5,000 in funds that we can use for any stuff we want to do. And the issue of educating the public and how do we tie in what we're doing so people, that's sort of what I'd like to talk about. What
Yeah,
do we want to do this year? We have some funds.
I feel like, remember when WAC had was tracking recycling and garbage as a community, and I don't remember, was it a thermometer? I don't remember, it was a visual, it was
Yeah.
it was a big
Yeah,
thing that was
So-
printed, I mean, sustainability could do something like that,
And once
really
we-
target our trash. once
right.
we
We
get
have the
some
data. Yeah, we have the data now already that we're
And
starting.
we could
to
do a campaign around that.
Yeah, that's one. Talking about what people can do in their own homes, whether it's the issue of replacing your gas powered equipment, or how do you make your home more energy efficient, or whatever. I mean, I just, since it's now August, we have the money, let's think about how we want to do it and where we want to go during the course of the year so that we,
There's money from now until December.
that's money
For the whole year.
for
This
June.
fiscal year.
Yeah. All right.
Michelle, when is the deadline for the next newsletter?
Friday,
Friday, so if I write you an article about mulching leaves, will you put it in?
sure. I have
Short one?
one, but we could put that under conservation,
Yeah,
you wear that
And
hat.
what you want?
great.
Yeah, and actually, it's in this leaf blowing, the Amy wrote. She's got a paragraph that says, consider leaving your leaves. You already have the leaves, let them assist you in reducing weeds in your gardens. Leaves make great mulch. Swap your mower blade to a mulching blade. So there is a whole paragraph about that
Oh,
in the.
okay, fine, lovely, there you go.
Great.
I was gonna expand on that, but I'm not making promises, but I think that's a good way to go.
Yeah.
Considering fall is coming.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, and it says, don't wait until the first leaves fall, is the title of the article, and it's about. Switching over your equipment now and mulching your leaves and yeah,
Great.
it's good. She did a nice job.
Great.
Yeah.
Not ChatGPT either.
Oh, look it up on. Oh my God.
All right.
All right.
Anything else public, anybody in the public? Ann, you have any questions there? If not, we'll adjourn as. All right,
Okay,
thank you, Ann. I guess that was no. I will adjourn the meeting at 6:15. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Nice.
All right. Is there anybody coming